There's one more presentation between you guys and lunch. I know I'm speaking for Zeev and Landmark and all of us at Shelly Palmer Digital Leadership. The most important thing we can do as human beings is good. You can define what good is, you decide it for yourself. But one of our highest purposes is just to do good things. And we're all technologists in this room, aspiring technologists, and we are the architects of the technology that will drive this age. And so I believe, and I know Zeev believes, it is incumbent upon us, literally incumbent upon us, to figure out how to use technology to solve some of the world's biggest problems: hunger, clean water, medical. You name the big problem, we should be able to find a technology to solve it. You're about to hear from Scott Harrison, who is the founder and CEO of Charity Water. If you haven't heard of this, you will now. This is what it's about, period. If we're going to build technology, we should build technology that does something that's really extraordinary. Really extraordinary. Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Harrison.
Thanks, Zeev, for having me back. So I am in between you and lunch, and I'm going to try and make this really interesting. I go to a lot of conferences, and I hate being bored, and I'm a very visual learner. So I'm going to try and give you guys 150 pictures in the next 15 minutes and take you on a little bit of a story. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about my background and how I got into this through a crazy journey in nightlife. I'm going to talk about the water crisis and tell you some stories from the field. And then I'm going to talk about Charity Water and how we have been trying to use media, technology, creativity to bring clean drinking water to 1 billion people. A little bit about me. This is me as a kid. My parents used to cut my hair with a bowl, so I had a real bowl cut. Great kid growing up, taking care of a mom who was an invalid, so I had a crazy family situation, but I was like the perfect kid until I moved to New York City. And I learned that if you wanted to rebel against the conservative upbringing, you could rebel in style by becoming a nightclub promoter. So I learned that I could get people drunk and get paid to do this. And pretty much the next 10 years of my life just vanished. And 10 years later, you would have found me looking like this. 5 in the morning at some horrible club in Paris, pretty much addicted to cocaine, gambling, pornography, drinking way too much. Disaster. Disaster. So far from any sort of morality, spirituality, anything that I'd grown up with. So, came to my senses on a beach in South America, Uruguay, with all the right people, had this kind of crazy, I started reading theology, hungover, that's another story. Decided to leave everything behind and go serve the poor for a year. Give 1 year of the 10 that I'd wasted back. And I started applying to humanitarian organizations. I'm 28, I'm a nightclub promoter, I can get 1,000 people in a club, and no humanitarian organization will take me. So they're like, what is a nightclub promoter? You know, how could you possibly be useful to us? Thankfully, one organization said, you're a photographer, if you pay us $500 a month, we will let you take pictures of our organization. I was like, great, I'm in. Sounds like the opposite of my life. So I joined this group called Mercy Ships. This becomes my new home. I got about 150 square feet on this hospital ship. Amazing org for 25 years. Doctors had sailed this floating hospital up and down the West African coast, and they just brought medical care to people that didn't have access to it. So we sail into Liberia. Now, I had never heard of Liberia before. I thought Africa was a country. Learned that there were actually many countries in Africa. Liberia was one founded in 1822, actually, by American freed slaves. And the country had been crushed by Charles Taylor. 14 years of civil war ruined the place. So I go in and I'm going to take pictures of what these doctors are doing. I'm going to help them raise awareness and money. This is what I saw in Liberia, people living in bombed out buildings. These are the state of houses in Liberia, kind of a mess. And when you got sick, you were in real trouble. Because there was one doctor for every 50,000 people in the country. Here we have a doctor for 180 of us. So before the ship sailed in, an advanced team would put up these flyers all over the country, and I learned that I was going to be taking pictures of people with huge tumors, flesh-eating disease, cleft palates, cleft lips, stuff I'd never even seen. And you have no idea how many people are going to respond to these very severe conditions, and 7,000 people came. So that was my third day on the mission, 5:30 in the morning with my camera. There are 7,000 people outside a stadium waiting for 1,500 surgery slots. So it was a big problem. We knew we were going to turn away 5,000 people because we didn't have enough doctors, we didn't have enough money. People came with crazy conditions, goiters, tumors, flesh-eating disease. We would meet women like Marthaline, who just had a benign tumor that's grown for 10 years. She's got a towel in her hands because when she would walk out, people would throw rocks at her. They thought she was cursed. About 45 minutes with the doctors, and they just gave her a new face. And this is what happened every single day. So as you can imagine, selfish nightclub promoter goes, learns of the sacrificial work of doctors, sees extreme poverty. It was pretty jarring to me. I got my first taste of dirty water in Liberia. There was one guy off to the side, and even though it was a medical ship, he was given a little bit of money to help people in the villages get clean water. And he would show me the sources of drinking water. They were ponds, they were swamps, they were rivers. And I remember saying, like, no wonder things are growing on people's faces if they have to drink water with algae in it, with leeches in it. And what he would do is he would work with the locals, he would train them how to dig wells, we would provide the PVC, the concrete, the pumps, and he would take me back and I could drink the clean water right next to the swamp for a few $1,000s. And here these doctors were spending money on expensive surgeries. One guy is attacking kind of a root problem. And I came back to New York at 30 years old after 2 years of volunteering, and everything had been turned upside down for me. You know, I wanted to serve for the rest of my life. I wanted to make as big an impact as possible. Now, I'd seen tons of problems when I was there, but I kept coming back to this pond. Yeah, no human being should ever have to drink water like this. I wouldn't let my dog drink this water. And I decided to try to work on the water problem, and that's where the idea for Charity Water was born. So just in 3 minutes, I'm going to take you guys through this problem. So right now, almost 800 million people don't have what y'all probably take for granted every day. I took for granted my entire life. Clean and safe drinking water. 800 million people without it. And what that actually looks like is communities drinking from open sources. Kids like John Bosco, a teenager, walking knee-deep into water that looks like this, that he will then take home and give to his brothers and his sisters, and he will drink himself. Huge stats on disease. The World Health Organization came up with, said up to 80% of global disease is directly related to unsafe water and a lack of toilets. Some of this stuff you've heard of, like cholera, some of this stuff you might not have heard of, schistosomiasis. 300 million people right now have worms crawling around their body because they drank dirty water. And one of the biggest problems is the amount of time wasted fetching water. 40 billion hours are wasted just in Africa alone, back and forth to the water source. This is more than entire global workforces, more than the entire economy of the country of France. And some women walk up to 8 hours. We heard a story of a woman named Leta Koros, and we just heard this story. It's pretty tough. She was walking 3 hours out, 5 back. She had a clay pot. And one day, she came back into the village, and she tripped and she fell, and the clay pot broke. And she was so filled with despair, she hung herself in the middle of the village in a tree. She couldn't go back. It's a huge, huge problem. It's also a solvable problem. We know right now how to bring clean drinking water to every single person on this planet. There's not one solution, there are many solutions, like hand-dug wells, like my friend was doing in Liberia, drilled wells, spring protections, rainwater harvesting systems, filtration when there's arsenic or fluoride in the groundwater. $65, you can help a family in Cambodia get a biosand filter. It's just made of concrete, an inch layer of good bacteria grows after 21 days, and you put nasty water in that looks like this, and you get water like this out that I could drink and you could drink. And in fact, I did. For about $10,000, you can hand dig a well, and the community gets involved, and it's just months. It's jackhammers. Sometimes it's dynamite as you hit rock. And then water starts coming in at your feet, and you keep pumping it out, and you go deeper and deeper. $15,000, $20,000, you bring in $1 million drilling rig, and you've got 8 skilled drillers. And then you're going into deeper aquifers, and you get incredible amounts of money. There's a horrible irony that in so many of these communities, walking 8 hours, dying drinking bad water, there are lakes underneath. This is a school of 1,500 kids that never had clean water before we were able to drill there. And then water truly transforms communities. It starts changing everything. It restores health to kids. They stop dying of diarrhea because they have clean water to drink, sanitation, hygiene. Women will use the extra time. Some of them just spend more time with their kids. They're just better mothers. Other of them will start small businesses. They'll earn an extra $1, $2 a day at the market. Kids spend more time in school. And the beauty of it is it's actually provable. It's tangible, right? You know that there's a problem or there's not. There's either clean water that men, women, and children are drinking or they're not. And water's flowing or it's not. So you can know that you've actually made a difference. There's an incredible statistic the UN just put out saying every dollar you invest in water and sanitation, you get $12 of economic return. So water makes people healthier, but it really makes them richer. Time savings, improved health, ability to work, improved education. They found in some communities it was as high as $28 return. So Helen Appio, one final story on the positive end. Helen, we talk about economic benefits, we talk about health. Helen was served by a charity water well, and our team went out to meet her, learned her story. She said, I could take 2 jerry cans a day, and it wasn't enough for my family of 4. I had 2 children, I had a husband, and she said, I just had to make decisions every day what to do with 10 gallons. Would I cook? Would I clean? Would I garden? Would I wash my husband's clothes? Would I wash my kids' school uniforms? She said they'd be sent home from school if they turned up with dirty uniforms. And she said, I always put my family first. She said, I came last. My clothes, my face, my body. She said, now that there's a water point, now that there's 3 times as much water and clean water in my village, she said, now I'm beautiful. And our program team was like, we never thought of this before. Helen, of course, was beautiful, but now because she had extra water, just by tripling the quantity of water, she could wash her face and her clothes. And water was able to restore dignity to her. 60 years ago, I started on a couch after coming back from Liberia. 2 very small things I wanted to try to do before I died. One was to help end the water crisis and see a day where my kids and my grandkids would never know a single person that didn't have clean water to drink. And I also wanted to reinvent charity. Now, when I came back, my friends, they were cynical about charity. They weren't giving. They had all of these excuses. The black hole of charity. Some guy is going to drive a Lexus with my money in Africa. All of these excuses. Inefficient, bureaucratic charities. And they were right in some times. There were plenty of big charities that had burned people. And I thought, man, there's this huge group of disenchanted people. Maybe we could bring back to the table if we had a new model. So I had 3 big ideas. One was to fix the money problem and just always use 100% of the public's money directly for projects. Put it in a bank account, never touch it except to directly fund projects. And people are like, well, how will you pay for your staff and your operations, and like how will you fly around the world to develop these programs? I had no idea at the time. Opened up 2 bank accounts anyway with $100 each and said, we'll figure it out. Maybe we can get private donors and board members that actually would like to build an organization, would like to pay staff. But that was the idea. We said, we will even pay back credit card fees. So if someone gave $1,000 and Amex took 4% off the top, we would separately raise that money and send all $1,000. PayPal has since been helping us with this problem. Second, we said, let's use technology and show people where the money went. I walked into a Best Buy, I saw that GPS devices cost $99. So we could know where every water project was anywhere in the world within 10 feet for the cost of $100. So we said, we will never put $1 into the field unless we are guaranteed proof, and then we will make all of that transparent and public on Google Earth. If we have 1,000 water projects, we have 1,000 photos in GPS. We can visit them, we know where they are. Third thing, some of the people in this room will probably understand, we wanted to build a brand. Charities they were horrible at branding and marketing. They had some of the worst websites in the world, like second to insurance companies, animated blinking GIFs and just kind of stale storytelling. And there wasn't a single charity brand that I looked up to that was aspirational, that was like an Apple or like a Nike. And I thought, man, if we're going to solve a problem this big, we need an epic brand. A brand people can trust, a brand that's transparent, an aspirational brand. Nick Kristof wrote in the New York Times that people are peddling toothpaste, he said, with more sophistication than all of the world's life-saving causes. I thought that was broken, and you didn't really need a lot of money to build a brand. You just needed good taste, really good taste, and a couple talented designers. So we started, the only thing I knew how to do to raise money was throw a party in a nightclub. 6 years ago, I threw a huge birthday party, invited 700 people. I gave them an open bar and said, just drop $20 on the way in. Raised $15,000, and then we immediately took that money to northern Uganda. We built 3 wells, we fixed 3 wells in a refugee camp, and then we sent the photos and the GPS back to those 700 people. Very powerful. They had kissed goodbye to that money. The fact that a charity bothered to tell them where $20 went. Some of them didn't even remember coming to the party. Thought it was awesome. They were generous. And we realized that if we could close the loop, if we could use technology to connect people to 100% of their money, we could scale. We might be able to solve this problem. And we just tried to do that on repeat. 6 years later, we've now raised $74 million from 400,000 people around the world. And we've turned that into clean water for 2.7 million people. Right now, there are over 1,000 people working on charity water projects. Thank you, guys. 6,600 villages, 20 countries. Last year, we helped almost 2,000 people a day. And you guys hear these horrible statistics. What about taking back the statistics? One person getting clean water every 42 seconds. We're going closer to 1 million people this year. The way that we've been able to do it, we've just been creative. We came up with creative ad campaigns, getting donated media, both banner ads, donated taxis, buses, trying to use images to bring life to some of these statistics. I thought you could use design even to make a rig look good and break it up into its components and explain to people how it worked. We had creative partnerships with brands like Saks Fifth Avenue. They shot their catalogs in water. They gave up the windows on Fifth Avenue for 7 days after Armani took his windows down. Raised $700,000 as a company through their employees, through their vendors, through their customers. Macallan came to us and said, we have an old 64-year-old whiskey. What if we took it on a tour and to taste it, you had to drop $5,000? And we thought they were crazy. And then they wrote us a $605,000 check from a single bottle of whiskey. So we loved working with companies. What do you do? What's your talent? And can we use that to help people get clean water? We opened up the NASDAQ. We closed the New York Stock Exchange. Just as a way to raise awareness, as simple as just asking if you're a nonprofit. And then we had this big idea asking people to give out their birthday and ask for their age in dollars. No party, no gifts. Turn your birthday into a giving moment. You don't need a handbag. You don't need a belt or a tie. 7-year-old kids like Max went out, raised $22,000, asking for sevens. Justin Bieber tweeted 3 times, raised $47,000. Will and Jada Smith raised $200,000, got all their fans involved. Nona Ween turned 89, gave up her birthday. And we wanted to use technology to connect people. So we built something called Dollars to Projects, where every single dollar was tracked through. And if you were a fundraiser, you could see the name of the villages where your donations went. You could learn about them. You could see how much the actual projects cost. You could see which of your donors made up those projects. Again, the money existed in a vacuum, so we could do this with integrity. You could see photos. You could see where they were on a map. You could see that they were near schools or near rivers or villages. And every donor got a report saying you gave $1 or $39, click here to see where it went. We crowdsourced the world's first drilling rig, 12,000 people, funded a $1.2 million rig. We put a GPS unit on it and we gave it a Twitter account. And every single time it drills, it tweets its location. Complete transparency, even connecting people for the next 15 years to a drilling machine that's giving life and hope to people every single day. Really excited, just to wrap up, remote monitoring. We said it's not good enough anymore, 6 years in, to know where our wells are. Now we want to know that they're functioning. And we're announcing a $5 million pilot next week with a huge technology company. We are going to put sensors in these projects and get real-time data. We want them to function for at least 10 years, and we'll be able to hook donors up to that data stream, knowing 4 years from now how many gallons of clean water the project you sacrificed for, the project you made happen, is actually helping. As we look ahead, we've only done 2.5 million. There's 800 million people left to go. So we're going for 100 million people in the next 10 years. We're going to have to raise an extraordinary amount of money to do this. $3 billion for water projects. It's like impossible. No charity's ever scaled like this in the history of the world. But we've been growing at about 95% a year for the first 5 years. So we feel like maybe it's possible. Maybe we live in an age, in an era where this is possible. We're raising money through individuals, through companies, through corporations. It's possible, and people can care, and if there's ever an issue. Just to give you guys a look at nonprofit giving, down 7%, down 6%. Got 2 back. Love your help. You guys all represent communities, people, brands, companies. If you are interested in helping us eradicate water poverty, helping us give clean and safe drinking water to every single person on earth, email me directly, Scott@charitywater.org. untitled.org. Thank you, guys.